The Badlands were silent that night, wide and cold under a pale moonlight. Evelyn Harper lay on the hard ground beside her broken wagon. Unable to move her legs, she tried to lift her head, but pain shot through her spine like a knife. Her hands trembled as she reached toward the stars, hoping someone would pass by and help her hours earlier. Her horses had panicked after a loud crack of thunder, tipping the wagon and throwing her against the wheel. Now, she lay helpless in the middle of a lonely stretch of land that everyone feared. The wind carried the sound of distant coyotes, and the darkness around her felt alive. 2 riders had passed her before sunset, but both refused to stop when they saw her condition. One man even muttered that the Badlands were cursed and helping a stranger would bring trouble. Another looked at her injuries and decided she was not worth the time, then rode away quickly. Evelyn had begged, crying for help, but her voice faded as the men disappeared into the dust. She felt the sting of being left behind, like her life meant nothing to anyone who had crossed this harsh place. As night fell, fear settled heavily in her chest. The cold air crept into her bones and she tried to stay awake. Terrified she might never wake again, she whispered for God to send someone. Anyone, even a miracle. But hours passed, and the only answer she heard was the dry wind moving across the rocks. Her breath became shallow and her lips dry. Her body shivered uncontrollably, yet sweat formed on her forehead because of the pain. She felt her hope slipping away like sand through fingers. In that fragile moment, when she believed no one would ever help her, she heard a soft thud in the distance. Hoofbeats steady and calm, not hurried like the other riders. She blinked, trying to focus her blurry eyes. A lone horse appeared out of the shadows, its dark coat blending with the night. On its back sat a tall Comanche healer named Tohu, though she did not know his name yet. He carried the quiet confidence of a man whose life moved with the rhythm of the land. He stopped several feet away and studied her without speaking. Evelyn's heart raced as fear and relief mixed inside her. She had never seen a Comanche up close and had heard many frightening stories from townspeople, but right now he was the only human presence willing to stand near her. Tohu slowly dismounted his horse and approached with measured steps. He crouched beside her and placed 2 fingers gently on her neck to feel her pulse. His touch was warm and steady, different from the hurried, fearful hands of others who had avoided her earlier. Evelyn tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered. Tohu tilted his head slightly, observing her injuries with calm eyes that carried deep knowledge. "You fell," he said in a quiet voice, more like a statement than a question. She nodded weakly, unable to stop tears from slipping down her cheeks. He examined her spine with practiced hands. Pressing gently along each bone, Evelyn gasped when he touched a tender spot, and he paused, listening to her breath. "Bones not broken," he murmured. "But hurt badly." His words brought a small spark of hope back into her fading spirit. He reached into a leather pouch hanging from his horse and pulled out a small roll of herbs. "These will help your pain," he said, crushing them between his palms to release their scent. The sharp, earthy smell filled the air, grounding her in the present moment. He placed the herbs near her face and instructed her to breathe slow. Evelyn followed his guidance, and the tension in her body eased just a little. Tohu looked at her again and said, "I will not leave you here." Those simple words felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning soul. Without another moment of hesitation, he slid one arm under her back and another under her legs. He lifted her carefully as if she weighed nothing. Evelyn cried out from the sharp pain, but he whispered gently, "Breathe." He carried her to his horse and secured her in a safe, supported position. The warmth of his coat shielded her from the night wind. Her eyelids grew heavy. But before she drifted into sleep, she heard him say, "You will live," and for the first time since the accident, she believed it. Tohu guided his horse through the narrow paths of the Badlands, moving carefully so Evelyn would not feel more pain. The night air wrapped around them. Cold yet strangely calming, Evelyn clung to consciousness, drifting in and out as the herbs eased the sharpest edges of her suffering. Whenever she opened her eyes, she saw only the steady shape of the Comanche healer walking beside the horse, hand on its reins, making sure it moved with soft steps. No one had ever handled her with such patience, not even the travelers she once trusted. She watched the side of his face in the moonlight. Noticing the calm strength in his jaw and the focus in his eyes, he didn't look afraid of the Badlands, nor worried about who she was. He simply looked determined to save her at last. They reached a small, sheltered hollow between two tall rock walls. There was a hidden fire pit there, the ashes still warm from where he must have stayed earlier. He laid her down gently on a blanket he spread over the ground. Evelyn winced, clenching her fists, trying not to cry. Tahu knelt beside her and started preparing the fire, striking flint with practiced ease until small sparks caught the dry grass. Soon the warmth of the flames pushed back the chill surrounding her tired body. He took out a wooden bowl, dried roots, herbs, and a small pouch of crushed leaves. Evelyn watched him work with steady hands, each movement deliberate and full of knowledge. He mixed the herbs with warm water and stirred until the scent filled the hollow. "Earthy and sharp, that will help your pain," he said quietly. Lifting the bowl to her lips, she drank it slowly. The taste bitter but soothing. A warmth spread through her chest, pushing away her fear bit by bit. After she finished, he examined her spine again, his touch careful and respectful. "You can feel this?" he asked as he touched her lower back. "Yes," she whispered. Though the sensation was faint, he nodded, a small sign of relief crossing his face. "Good," he said. Nerves waking, his calm voice made her believe him instantly. She had been terrified she might never walk again. Yet here he was telling her there was hope. Evelyn studied him more closely now. His long dark hair was tied back, and a thin line of paint marked his cheek. His clothing was simple but well made, decorated with small beads that shone faintly in the firelight. She realized he carried both the weight of knowledge and the softness of a healer's heart, something people in her town often failed to understand about the Comanche. She wondered how many lives he had saved and how many stories walked with him across these lands. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. Her voice trembled, unsure how he would respond. Tahu looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because you were alone," he said. "Pain in any body is pain." His words were simple, yet they held a truth so deep it silenced her. She had heard men speak of honor, bravery, and kindness, but none had ever spoken with such sincerity. As the fire warmed the hollow, Evelyn began to feel her body relax. Her fingers tingled lightly, and she lifted one hand to see if she could move it steadily. Tahu noticed and nodded. "The herbs open the blood," he said. "Your body listens." She didn't fully understand the science behind his methods, but she understood that he knew what he was doing far more than any doctor she had met in the settlements. Hours passed, and the moon climbed higher. Tahu prepared a makeshift support to keep her spine aligned while she rested. He placed folded skins beneath her legs to relieve pressure and covered her with another blanket. Evelyn felt safer than she had since the wagon accident. "Sleep now," he told her. "Your body must rest to fight," but sleep didn't come right away. Her mind replayed the moment the two travelers abandoned her earlier. Their cold voices echoed in her head. "Not worth the trouble," they had said, leaving her to die. She swallowed hard and turned her head slightly toward Tahu as he tended the fire. "You're not afraid to help me even though I'm different?" she asked. He met her gaze without hesitation. "Different," he repeated, almost puzzled. He shook his head slowly. "The land does not choose who deserves life," he said. "Humans do that, and they are often wrong." His words felt like a quiet truth the world often ignored. The fire crackled softly, and the hollow glowed with warm light. Tahu moved closer and checked her pulse again, his touch steady. "You are strong," he told her. "Your body fights well." Evelyn felt a small shiver run through her, not from pain but from the reassurance his voice carried. For the first time since the accident, she believed she might walk again. As her eyelids grew heavy, she whispered, "Thank you." Tahu nodded once. Settling beside the fire to keep watch, "You rest," he said. "I will guard the night with that promise." Evelyn let go of her fear for the first time since the Badlands swallowed her. and wrapped in the warmth of the fire and the presence of the healer who refused to leave her, she finally drifted into peaceful sleep. Evelyn woke to the soft glow of morning light touching the walls of the hollow. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then the ache in her back returned, gentle but present. Reminding her of the night before, she blinked slowly and saw Tahu sitting near the entrance. Sharpening a wooden tool with calm focus, his presence felt steady, like a rock in a river that never moved, no matter how fast the water rushed. He noticed her eyes open and nodded slightly. "You rest well," he said, his voice low and steady. Evelyn tried to sit up, but pain pushed her back. Tahu raised a hand gently, not touching her but guiding her to stay still. "Not yet," he said. "Your spine needs more time." She let out a breath and settled into the blanket beneath her. The fire had burned down to warm embers. A thin trail of smoke lifted into the cool air. It smelled faintly of cedar and herbs, calming her troubled mind. Tahu walked to her side and checked her pulse again. His touch was professional. Almost clinical, but not cold. "You can feel your legs?" he asked, Evelyn focused, trying to sense anything below her hips. A faint tingling, soft like distant pins, pulsed in her toes. "Yes," she whispered. A small smile tugged at the corner of Tahu's mouth. "Good," he said. "Your body learns its way back." He prepared a paste of crushed leaves and applied it along her lower back. The cool mixture seeped into her skin, bringing relief she had not felt since the accident. Evelyn watched him work, noticing how carefully he handled each herb. "You know so much," she said softly. "Have you treated many people?" Tahu nodded without looking up. "Many," he replied. "Pain touches all families." "All people?" as he wrapped a small cloth around her waist for support. Evelyn felt a mix of gratitude and curiosity. Most settlers she knew spoke harshly about the Comanche, calling them wild or dangerous. But the man kneeling in front of her was gentle, wise, and calm. She wondered how a world could be so wrong about someone like him. They shared a quiet morning, eating the simple meal he prepared from dried roots and small berries he'd gathered earlier. The food was plain, but the warmth it brought to her stomach reminded her she was alive. "Where did you learn all this?" she asked. Tahu wiped his hands on a cloth and answered. "My grandmother," he said. "She healed many people before the land grew quiet." There was a sadness in his words, a memory that still lived in his eyes. Evelyn didn't push him for more. Instead, she told him about her life, her small town, her dreams of traveling west, the way she wanted to see more than the same dusty streets she grew up in. Tahu listened without interrupting, his gaze steady and respectful. No one had ever listened to her stories with such full attention. It made her feel seen in a way she had never felt before. As the day warmed, the buzzing of insects filled the air. Tahu helped her try to move her legs again. Supporting her gently, Evelyn pushed through the ache, trying to lift her right foot. It moved only a little, but it moved, she gasped. "Tears filling her eyes, you see?" He said softly. Strength returns. She couldn't speak, too overwhelmed by the tiny miracle her body offered. Then, the peace around them shifted. A distant sound echoed through the Badlands. Hoofbeats, many of them, heavy and uneven. Tahu's eyes narrowed slightly, his shoulders tightening. He stood and walked to the edge of the hollow, listening carefully. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at her with a seriousness she had not seen before. "Riders," he said quietly. "Settlers." Evelyn's heart dropped. She remembered the men who had passed her before, the same kind who had refused to help her. Men who feared the Comanche more than they feared the cruelty of leaving her to die. "What do they want?" she asked. Who shook his head slowly. "They do not know you are safe," he said. "And they do not trust my hands." The hoofbeats grew louder, bouncing off the rock walls like drums. Evelyn felt fear rise inside her, sharp and cold. She didn't want to be taken from the only person who had shown her kindness. She didn't want to be protected by people who had abandoned her. "Tahu," she whispered, voice breaking. He knelt beside her and placed his hand over hers. His touch was steady, grounding her shaking breath. "I will not leave you," he said firmly. Whatever comes for the first time since the accident, Evelyn didn't feel like a helpless victim. She felt like she had an ally, a protector, someone who saw her humanity when the rest of the world closed its eyes. And as the riders approached, she clung to that truth. Knowing the next moments would change everything, the hoofbeats grew louder, echoing through the narrow stone passage like rolling thunder. Evelyn felt every vibration in the ground beneath her, each one sharper than the last. Tahu rose to his feet and stepped toward the entrance of the hollow, his posture calm but alert. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who knew how to read danger before it arrived. The morning sun cast long shadows on the rocks, stretching like dark fingers across the earth. Evelyn pushed herself upright as much as her body allowed. Fear tightening her breath, she wanted to call out to him, to beg him not to confront the riders, but she saw the steady way he stood, back straight, eyes narrowed toward the horizon. There was no fear in him, only readiness. "Tahu," she whispered, her voice cracking with worry. He looked back at her briefly, and for a moment his expression softened. "You will be safe," he told her. "They come loud because loud men carry weak hearts." Then he stepped outside the hollow, standing openly where the riders could see him. Dust lifted into the air as 6 settlers rode into view, all armed, all tense. Their faces were twisted with suspicion, fear, and a kind of anger that came from ignorance. One rider, a broad man with a thick beard, pointed at Tahu there. He shouted, "I told you, I saw one of them dragging a woman across the Badlands." Another rider pulled out a rifle. "Gripping it too tightly, he's got her hidden," the man said. "They always take the weak ones." Evelyn felt heat rush up her throat. Fury mixing with fear at their words, she tried to call out, but her voice was too soft to reach them from inside the hollow. Tahu raised one hand, palm up, signaling that he meant no harm. "I found her hurt," he said calmly. "I treat her injuries," but his gentle voice only made the men more suspicious. "Treat?" The bearded man spat. "Or finish what your people started." Tahu did not react to the insult. He simply kept his voice steady. "She lives because I helped," he said. She could not walk. The riders exchanged glances, their distrust growing instead of fading. One of them nudged his horse forward and shouted, "Bring her out here!" Now, Evelyn felt her heartbeat slam in her chest. She didn't want to be dragged out or taken by men who had already proven they didn't value her life. She tried to push herself forward again, but pain surged through her spine. Still, she would not let the lie continue. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted with all the strength she had, "Stop! Leave him alone." Her voice cracked through the tension like a whip. The riders jerked their heads toward the hollow. Shocked to hear her, Tahu turned slightly, giving her space to speak but staying close in case they rushed forward. Evelyn struggled to sit upright as the men stared at her in disbelief. The bearded rider scowled. "You alive?" he muttered, almost annoyed. "Yes," she said, breath trembling. "Because of him," she pointed a shaking hand at Tahu. "He saved me when all of you refused." Her words struck the group like stones thrown into still water. Some men shifted uncomfortably, guilt flickering across their faces. But one rider, younger and angrier, clenched his jaw. "You don't know what these people are capable of," he said. His voice tight. "They tricked the weak, used them." Evelyn felt a wave of anger rise inside her. "Tahu has more honor than any of you showed me," she snapped. "You left me to die." Silence fell across the Badlands. Even the horses seemed to stop breathing. Tahu said nothing, letting her truth settle on the men like dust. His calm presence only made her words hit harder. The young rider pointed his rifle again. "We're taking her," he said. "You can't stop us." Tahu stepped in front of the hollow, shoulders squared. "You bring harm if you cross this line," he warned quietly. His tone did not rise, but it carried a weight heavier than any weapon. Evelyn felt a spark of fear, but also a strange sense of safety. She had never seen someone defend her with such still, controlled strength. "Tahu, please," she whispered, wishing she could stand beside him. But he didn't move, didn't hesitate. "I protect those in my care," he said softly. "That is my oath." The men hesitated, unsure whether to push forward or retreat. The bearded man finally lowered his weapon a little. "This ain't worth bloodshed," he muttered. Looking at Evelyn again, "She's walking?" "No," Evelyn said firmly. "But I will because of him." The truth in her eyes shook them more than Tahu's stance ever could. The riders slowly backed away, confused, angry, but no longer ready to fight. Hooves scraped against rock as they turned around one by one, disappearing into the rising heat of the Badlands when the last rider vanished. Tahu finally relaxed his shoulders and turned to her. "You spoke strong," he said gently. Evelyn felt tears rise, not from fear, but from relief. "You protected me," she whispered. He shook his head softly. "You protected yourself," he said. And in that moment, under the growing sun, they both understood something had changed between them forever. The dust from the rider's departure still hung in the air. Drifting slowly like faded smoke, Evelyn lay back against the blanket, her chest rising and falling with shaky breaths. Her heart was still racing from the confrontation. But inside that fear was a growing fire. For the first time since her accident, she had spoken for herself and been heard. For the first time in a long time. Her voice mattered. Tahu knelt beside her again, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "Breathe slow," he said, his voice calm and steady. She followed his instructions, letting her lungs fill slowly until the trembling eased. "You did well," he added, looking at her with a quiet pride. Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. He checked her spine once more, pressing gently near the injured spot. The pain was there, but it was duller than yesterday. "You heal," he said. "Your body fights." Evelyn nodded, wiping the last tears from her cheeks. "I couldn't let them take me," she whispered. "They didn't care whether I lived or died." Tahu paused and looked toward the horizon where the riders had gone. "Many men fear what they do not understand," he said. "Fear makes them cruel." Evelyn followed his gaze, thinking about how quickly those men had judged him without knowing anything. "You were the only one who stopped," she said softly. "The only one who stayed." Tahu didn't respond right away. Instead, he gathered a handful of herbs and laid them out beside her, preparing a new mixture to ease her swelling. As he worked, Evelyn studied the lines of his face, the quiet strength around his eyes, the patience in his movements. He wasn't a man who needed to speak loudly to be heard. He didn't need to argue, threaten, or demand. His dignity carried its own weight, and she realized how rare that kind of strength was in the world she came from. When he finished the mixture, he applied it to her spine with gentle hands. A cool relief spread through her like water sliding over hot stones. Evelyn exhaled slowly, her muscles loosening. "You will stand," Tahu said, not as a guess but as a certainty. "You will walk." She wanted to believe him, and for the first time. Belief didn't feel impossible. She closed her eyes, imagining herself taking steps again, imagining a future that didn't feel empty or broken when she opened her eyes. Tohu was watching her with a thoughtful expression. "You fear them coming back?" he asked. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said. "They think they know what's best for me." Tohu tilted his head slightly. "But you know what is best for you?" he said simply. Evelyn felt his words settle inside her like truth she had been waiting her whole life to hear. The morning stretched on, warm sunlight filtering into the hollow. Tahu helped her try small movements again. Encouraging her to lift each leg slowly, the left one moved first. A small tremble, but a real effort. She gasped in surprise, tears springing to her eyes. "You see," he said gently. "You fight strong, but the peace didn't last long." By midday, dust rose again in the distance. This time slower, more cautious. Evelyn tensed instantly. "Tahu," she whispered, voice tight with fear. He stepped outside once more, watching the trail. But it wasn't the settlers returning. It was only two men from the nearby settlement who worked as scouts. Their expressions were uneasy but not hostile. They rode closer until one called out. "We heard there was trouble," the scout said. "Some men came back saying a Comanche had taken a woman." Tahu didn't move from his position. "I did not take her," he said. "I saved her." The scouts exchanged a glance. Then one of them dismounted and approached slowly. He peered into the hollow and saw Evelyn lying on the blankets. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes brighter than yesterday. "You all right, miss?" he asked carefully. Evelyn nodded. "I'm alive because of him," she said firmly. "He saved me when the others refused." The scout scratched the back of his neck. "Uneasy. That's not what they told the town," he muttered. "They were wrong," Evelyn snapped, surprising even herself. The scout looked between her and Taihu again. Then, "Do you want to come with us?" he asked gently. Evelyn swallowed hard and shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm staying here until I can walk." The men were stunned. One opened his mouth as if to argue, but Evelyn raised her hand. "My voice decides," she said, louder this time. "I choose to stay." The scouts nodded slowly, realizing she meant every word. "We'll tell the town," the older one said. "We'll tell them you're safe." They mounted their horses and left, disappearing back toward the settlement when they were gone. Taihu turned to her with quiet respect in his eyes. "You speak strong truth," he said. Evelyn felt her chest tighten with something warm, something steady. "Because you believed me when no one else did," she whispered. Taihu nodded once. "And now you believe yourself," he said. And in that moment, she realized he was right. She wasn't just healing her body. She was learning how to stand in her own voice for the first time in her life. The next morning arrived quietly, its soft light spilling over the rocky walls of the hollow. Evelyn woke, feeling stronger than she had in days, though her back still throbbed with a deep, dull ache. She turned her head and saw Taihu grinding herbs with a smooth stone. His movements slow and focused, it struck her again how calm he always was. No matter how heavy the moment felt, his presence alone seemed to steady the world around her. "You wake early," he said without looking up. Sensing her eyes on him, Evelyn smiled faintly. "I didn't want the pain to win today," she whispered. Taihu nodded, pouring the crushed herbs into a small bowl. "Today your body learns more," he said. "We try standing." Her breath caught in her throat. The idea felt like a mountain she wasn't sure she could climb. But if he believed she could, she wanted to try. Taihu finished mixing the herbs with warm water and helped her drink the bitter liquid. The taste made her mouth twist, but she swallowed every drop. "You ready?" he asked gently, meeting her eyes. Evelyn nodded. Though fear coiled tight in her stomach, he moved her blanket aside and slid one arm behind her shoulders. The other supported her hip. "Slow," he murmured. "Let your breath guide you." Evelyn placed her hands against the ground. Pushing herself upward as he lifted, pain flashed through her spine like lightning. Her eyes squeezed shut and she gasped sharply. "Breathe," Taihu reminded her. His voice steady enough to pull her back from panic, she inhaled deeply, letting her lungs fill until the pain slipped from sharp to manageable. When she opened her eyes again, she was sitting fully upright. The world seemed brighter, wider, more alive. "You did it," Taihu said quietly, a small smile touching his lips. Her legs trembled beneath her, but they were awake. Her toes tingled as she tested small movements. The sensation was faint, but real. It filled her chest with hope so powerful, she almost cried. "Now we stand," Taihu said, rising to his feet and offering his hands. Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. "Taihu, what if I fall?" she whispered. He shook his head gently. "I am here," he said. "You will not fall." He placed her feet carefully on the ground, adjusting her legs to keep them aligned. Then he wrapped one arm around her waist. "Steady and firm. Hold my shoulder," he instructed. Evelyn gripped him tightly, feeling the muscle beneath his clothing. He lifted her slowly, inch by inch. Her legs wobbled violently at first. Pain spread through her lower back like fire, but she kept breathing, kept trusting, kept trying at last. Her knees locked and she stood, not tall, not steady, but standing. A small cry escaped her lips, part pain, part triumph. Taihu's hand tightened around her waist. "Supporting her weight, you stand," he said softly. "Your spirit stands with you." Tears welled up and slipped down her cheeks. "I never thought I could again," she whispered. Taihu brushed a stray tear from her chin with gentle fingers. "You carry strong belief now," he said. "That is medicine too." They practiced small steps for the next hour. Taihu walking backwards slowly, guiding her feet one at a time. Evelyn leaned heavily on him at first, but each step grew a little more confident, a little more her own between the steps. They talked to fill the tense air. Evelyn asked him about the land, the plants, the healing secrets he kept in his memory. He answered simply, as if sharing pieces of himself without fear. "My grandmother said every plant has a voice," he told her, some whisper, some shout. "But I'll speak truth." Evelyn listened like a child hearing a story for the first time. His knowledge felt sacred, not just learned, but lived. When she grew tired, he helped her sit again. Her legs shook so violently she could barely keep them still, but there was joy in the exhaustion. Joy in knowing she had taken steps toward freedom. Later, as the sun dipped lower, Tahu cooked a simple meal and handed her a small wooden cup of warm broth. "You heal more today," he said. "Tomorrow we do again." Evelyn sipped slowly, reflecting on how far she'd come. "I wouldn't be alive without you," she murmured. Tahu shook his head quietly. "You lived because you chose to fight," he said. "I only guided." She looked at him with soft eyes, touched by the humility in his voice. "But you stayed," she whispered. "You cared when no one else did." Tahu paused, his gaze drifting to the glowing horizon. "A healer does not choose who deserves help," he said. "Only the spirits choose who is placed in his path." Evelyn felt something warm in her chest, respect, gratitude, and something deeper she didn't dare name. She watched him as he tended the fire, his silhouette steady against the fading light. She had never trusted anyone the way she trusted him now. And she realized something profound. She wasn't just healing her body. She was healing the broken parts of her heart that had been silent for years, as night settled around them. Tahu adjusted her blankets and sat beside her to keep watch. "Rest," he said softly. "Your journey continues when the sun returns." Evelyn closed her eyes, a peaceful warmth enveloping her, and for the first time since the accident, she drifted into sleep not as a broken woman, but as someone rising again, one step at a time. The sun rose warm and golden on the final morning of Evelyn's healing. It washed over the hollow like a blessing, touching the rocks, the blankets, and the quiet figure of Tahu preparing the last of his herbs. Evelyn opened her eyes slowly, feeling a new steadiness in her body. Her legs still trembled when she moved them, but the weakness no longer felt permanent. She flexed her toes, then her ankles, amazed that the sensations were clear and strong. Tahu noticed her movements and gave a soft nod. "Today we walk far," he said, "your spirit ready." Evelyn swallowed, nerves tightening her throat. She wanted to walk. She needed to walk. But a small fear still clung to her. "What if I fail?" she whispered. Tahu shook his head gently. "You already rose," he said. "The failing was when you believed you could not." He helped her stand, one careful motion at a time. This time her legs steadied faster, holding her weight with surprising confidence. Evelyn gasped softly, unable to hide her amazement. Tahu stepped back a few inches. Letting her stand on her own, the morning breeze brushed her face, and she felt it as a reminder of life returning. "Now walk," he said in a calm tone. Evelyn lifted her right foot. The movement small but clear. She placed it forward and shifted her weight. Her left foot followed, slower but steady. She took one step, then another, then a third. A soft laugh escaped her lips. Shaky and full of disbelief, "I'm doing it," she whispered. "I'm really doing it." Tahu walked beside her, but did not touch her unless she wavered. "You walked because you believed," he said. "Not because I made you." Evelyn's heart swelled. For days, she had depended on him, leaned on him, trusted him with every breath. But now, she was reclaiming herself, her body, her voice, her strength. They practiced along the flat stretch of land outside the hollow. The sky stretched wide above them, bright and endless. Each step was painful, but each step was powerful. By midday, Evelyn could walk a dozen paces without losing balance. Her face glowed with pride, sweat, and hope. Tahu watched her silently, approval in his eyes. "You ready to return?" he said. Evelyn felt a mix of excitement and fear. Return meant facing the people who left her. Return meant telling the truth. Return meant standing in the world again, stronger than before. But she lifted her chin and nodded. Yes, she said softly, I'm ready. Tahu helped her pack what little they carried. He secured his herbs, tied the blankets to his horse, and offered his hand to help her mount. She hesitated, then shook her head. No, she said, I want to walk. Tahu's brows lifted slightly impressed. As you choose, he replied. She walked beside the horse while he led them toward the settlement. The journey was slow, but every step felt like reclaiming a piece of her life. As they approached the edge of the town, whispers began spreading. People gathered, stunned to see her alive. Walking and accompanied by the Comanche healer they had feared, the bearded settler who once pointed a rifle at Tahu stepped forward, shame clouding his eyes. Miss Harper, he said awkwardly. We heard you were taken. Evelyn stopped walking and faced him. The town fell silent, all eyes on her. No, she said, her voice clear and strong. I was abandoned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She lifted her chin higher. And this man, she said, gesturing to Tahu, saved my life. Gasps rose from the townspeople as she continued. He healed me, protected me, and gave me back my legs when the rest of you walked away. The bearded man lowered his head, guilt weighing down his shoulders. Others looked ashamed, shifting uncomfortably. Tahu stood behind her, silent and composed. He was not seeking praise, nor did he seem affected by the crowd's reaction. But Evelyn wanted the truth to be known. She needed the world to see him as he was, not as the rumors painted him. She stepped forward alone, slowly but with purpose. Her legs trembled, but her spirit was firm. I stand here because of him, she said. I walk because of him. Tears filled her eyes, not from weakness, but from gratitude. Tahu is a healer, a protector, a man of honor. The town watched in awe as she placed a hand on his arm. A gesture of respect, trust, and deep connection. Tahu bowed his head slightly. Accepting her truth without pride, you speak from your heart, he said softly, and now they see, in the days that followed. The settlement extended their respect to Tahu. Some approached him for healing, others apologized quietly. Evelyn stayed by his side. Helping him speak with those who once feared him, she felt stronger with every passing day. Not just in her legs, but in her conviction. And when she finally walked unaided across the town square, the people watched in silence as she crossed the space with steady steps. Tahu stood watching from a distance, his eyes calm, his heart carrying the quiet pride of a healer whose work was done. Evelyn met his gaze and smiled. Not a smile of thanks, but a smile that said she had found her strength, her voice, her truth, and none of it would have been possible without the Comanche healer who stopped when everyone else turned away.